Super happy to have both Dr. Will and Ashley Pippin with us. And they've asked for me not to read their full bios. I'm hoping that you guys did before the program, but since it's a small group, we're just, again, going to make it very comfortable. So Ashley is a therapist as well as a community theater leader. And Dr. William Washington is a licensed professional clinic counselor. He's also a musician, playing 9 instruments in some really amazing local groups. And so from here, I'm just gonna say thank you again to both of you for leading this tonight, and take it away.
Good evening. This is exciting. We are, like Natalie said, we're both artists as well. So this is going to be fun, and we hope this is interactive. I see in the chat, Anita, that you are still working, but if you have questions while we're talking, I can look in the chat when Dr. Will is talking and kind of answer those questions, and we want this to be as interactive as possible. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen while Dr. Will talks.
Yeah, so I'm so excited to talk with you all. The biggest thing about this is that we both get to, Ashley and I have been talking about working together for quite some time, and we have a lot of the same philosophies and way that we look at art and healing and self-care. And so I'm excited to not only present some new things that have never really been seen before, but then also really bring it back to us and how we can really create a more expansive way of looking at healing. So, you know, I didn't want to go into the whole bios because you'll get to learn this as we talk to you, you know. And as far as house rules are concerned, it was really just about, if you have questions, write them down. If you have thoughts or reflective things, write them down. So I tell my clients, get your purpose pen, get your purpose paper, and allow yourself to just kind of be in discovery and also be in exploration. And the best practice is the you practice. So have your own understanding. YOU, have your own understanding. So allow that to really be a part of your learning process today, and let your curiosity thrive. Ashley's really great at answering questions, and I know I can say a lot of words. So please allow your curiosity to really be at the forefront of all this.
All right, so jumping right in, and I'm gonna talk super slow, okay? Because that way I'm not going too fast, and it's a lot easier sometimes when you talk slower. Can understand what I'm saying. I have a tendency to talk super fast. So if I go super fast and not realize it, just say, "Hey, can you slow down?" So one of the purposes of us getting together today, of course, is to talk about mental health as an artist, right? And a lot of people have questions about, is that separate from just being an individual? And sometimes it is, yes, it depends, right? Sometimes as an individual, we don't practice self-care like we should. And then there are other times as an artist, we still don't practice self-care as we should, right? So then you have like 100% of both. I'm a regular person, maybe a working, maybe a mom, maybe I'm, just a regular Joe Schmo. I'm not an artist. But then you're an artist. Maybe you are a painter, maybe you're a writer, maybe you're a musician, maybe you're an actor, whatever your craft might be. And so it's really important to know self-care in general and what that is, but as an individual, but also as an artist. And so one of the things that is most important about our presentations today is Dr. Will and I thought about what is the most fun way to talk about self-care, right? Because self-care, you've heard it for the last couple of years because, mental health has this boost right now, right? Like ever since COVID, people are super stressed, super tired, and things have changed for our whole world, right? And so we're like, how can we make this interactive, fun, and super easy? Okay, so one of the modalities professionals use in a therapeutic session is what's called narrative therapy, right? And so we thought, okay, narrative therapy would be super close to home for artists, right? This is something that you all would really, really understand. And so narrative therapy provides a framework for individuals to explore, understand, reconstruct their life stories in ways that promote resilience, agency, and positive change, right? So this focus tonight is empowering you, Natalie, Tamara, I hope I'm saying your name right, Anita, and whomever else is here, empowering you to rewrite your narrative and live more in alignment with self-care as a high value, okay? So on the very basic level, right, as an individual, we all have values. So me, I value food, really, really good food. No matter where I am, that's one of my values. I have to go and find some really good food. It makes me feel good. It makes me love well. Also, it makes me love my children more. I value what they eat, what they put in their bodies, right? So most of the time when we have really, really good values, we strive off of using those values, and they help us, right? So with this, our focus, we want to help you rewrite your own narrative. So that's like, who are you? What are your thoughts? The more you tell your story, whatever that might look like, the less you become of it. And the more you tell your story and rewrite who you are as an artist, you can live more in alignment with self-care. So one of the things I would like to do real quick is I want everyone to close their eyes, except for Dr. Will, because he's driving. Okay, and I want to give you a second. Now, when you were first born, and in the therapy world, we sometimes call this your origin story, right? When you were first born, maybe you had a mom and dad, maybe you had a mom and mom, maybe you had a dad and dad, whomever those people were who took care of you, right? You began to tell yourself different stories about who you were, what you were experiencing. So as people, we come to understand meaning and identity through the stories that we tell about ourselves, whether it's the beginning stories like elementary school, high school, what we see on the playground, what we see off the playground, work, when we enter the workforce, whether it's after college or right after high school, who we choose to be in relationships with, right? So we have these different stories that we're living through. And based on the stories we already heard about ourselves and we have from that small child, help us and give us meaning, right? Through our stories and our experiences. So I want you to think about right now, what is the story you have about yourself? Who do you believe that you are as an artist? And then the second thing I want you to think about is, what is your experience with self-care? So after you take a moment, I'll let maybe a minute and 30 seconds go by. And I would love to hear your answers. And if you've already begun to think, oh, I have an answer, then feel free to let me hear. What is the story you all have about yourself as an artist? Don't be shy. I'm going to ask Dr. Wheel. Dr. Wheel, what is, oh, Anita, were you unmuting? Would you like to share?
You can let Dr. Will go first.
Dr. Wheel.
No cheating. Go ahead. What's your question?
What is the story you have about yourself as an artist?
I have the story of nobody wanted to hear me until I wanted to be heard. That's my origin story. No one wanted to hear me until I wanted to be heard. And now I make sure that everybody hears and knows my name on and off stage. It's become a lifestyle for me.
Wow. Anyone else want to take a stab at that question?
So the story, I feel unfinished in one aspect of my artistry, and I think that's everybody. Like, I don't know. For me as an artist, I feel as though in my art forms, I'm not fully realized as much as I should be. So feeling unfinished because I'm not fulfilling the future stuff, the future version I envisioned myself becoming when I embarked on my artist journey, to really step into that power as like, so my art forms are poetry, and I'm a painter too, but I keep my painting very much to my vest. But as a poet, like I've always been, out as a poet ever since I was a kid. So it's something like performing that and being that has always been good for me, but elevating and really being actualized is something that I guess I've always told myself, like, it's kind of a fearful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why.
You feel unfinished. Okay. Anyone else want to take a stab at that question? If not, we'll roll to the next. And I'm not leaving you hanging, Anita. Don't worry. Okay, so the second question is, what is your experience with self-care? This can be as an individual. Maybe it's as an artist. Maybe you try some things and then stop some things.
I guess I can go. I always actually used to think that, compared to all the people around me who are working, 60, 70-hour days, they're always busy, busy, busy. I used to think I was actually fairly good at that until I, set myself a goal to do things like, have one self-care activity a day, and I failed miserably. I guess I always feel like I have to finish the work before I can do, things that aren't work. And
Yeah, I think we've all felt that at some point. Like, you can't move on, you can't do something that's not as important until the important work is finished.
But if the work is never done, then you never take time for you, and that doesn't work either. So
yeah. Anyone else would like to take a stab at this question? What is your experience with self-care?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So with my self-care, I've learned that I only did self-care when stuff hit the fan. And when I first learned about self-care, I made it very external and not internal, which is really interesting. I was always reaching out for my self-care. That's my answer.
So that's funny because I feel like I'm actually kind of similar. Like I don't feel like I'm very good at like taking the time and actually exploring like my internal emotions a lot of times and like pinpointing what they are and like working through those all the time. But I am pretty good at like externally processing with other people and or just like throwing myself at things like, okay, ooh, I want to go spend time with that person or do this or do that and like feel very like externally motivated and like socially motivated, but not always good at like reflection. But I do think that I'm good at self-comfort a lot. Like if I'm like, oh, I really want, like you were saying about like food, like, oh, I really want like this comfort food or, you know, to do something nice for myself or like, you know, to do a face mask or whatever. Like I think I'm good at that stuff, like self-comfort or self-soothing. Yeah.
And that's one of the things we do want to talk about today is also allowing self-care to look and feel even self-soothing. It's the practice of that, understanding how much of a value it is and how much, you know, we hear it's a value, but until we partake in something consistently, then we don't really know if it's a value. Okay. Okay, so the why. So here's where I'm going to dig in a little bit more about why it's important, okay? So self-care for artists is a must. And so like others, whether you're creative, an artist, everyone feels stressed at times. Everyone is burnt out at times, right? But without proper work-life balance, even though I've heard it's not a thing, but it's a thing, you'll be drained and it will be a challenge to be more productive when there is no balance. You know, some people say, oh, work-life balance looks like I have to work, you know, 50% of my time, then I have to play 50% of my time. Like they're looking at numbers or they're looking at hours or they're looking at maybe specific days where if I work 5 days, I have to play for 5 days, or they're looking for something that matches, right? But I feel like it's more about what fulfills you than having to match time, right? Because it can be a conversation that is productive and that feels like self-care that you've had to have. Maybe it's your best friend. Maybe you needed to have a, you know, cleansing moment, having a conversation with someone, and that cleansing moment is self-care because it fueled you. And so that's productive. So when you think about work-life balance and boundaries, what does that look like to you? Now, I know like people are so fearful of the big B word. You know, when they hear boundaries, they're like, uh-oh, she's going to start talking that therapy talk with me. But practically, I want to hear someone tell me, like, what do they think? Keeping a schedule, boundaries. Do you get tense when you hear that word? Or do you think like, oh, I need to do it, but I don't know how to do it?
I think for me, it's the getting started doing the thing initially, realistic, like on a real level. Because having that boundary and then like scheduling your time around like that quote unquote work-life balance, it's really taken the initiative to get started. because you're supposed to balance your life, right? But then in the background of, for me at least, there's all these other things that I have to do, right? Like I have to clean my house. I have to make sure that, you know, my cat is fed. I have to check in on my mom. I have to check in on my siblings. Like I have to make sure, like there's all these life things that become a separate entity that I have to feed into. Like, I mean, I don't have to, but you know, I love my family, so I'm going to feed into them, right? But there's also that underlying, like, okay, when will I take the time to get started? And if I take that time, well, I don't want to rabbit hole too far, right? But I know, for again, just for me, especially when I'm painting, like that's a time where I'll lose track of time. I've had days where I've lost track of days just because I'm painting, I'm into what I'm doing. Like I'll lose a weekend just on a piece, right? Like it's, and then it's like, oh crap, I didn't do my laundry. I didn't cook for myself for the week. I didn't check in with my little brother. Like all of those things kind of feel as though they can avalanche at times when it comes to trying to manage it. And like, I guess, yeah, just the getting in each of those categories, getting started. So sometimes there are moments for me where I'll be like, okay, I shouldn't even start this project right now because I know I'm going to rabbit hole on it and I'm going to be in this space for at least a week or two where I'm like, I'm stuck in this piece and I have to be on the canvas with it. And, you know, I want to be in it because that's where my energy is, but I also know I need to do these 1,000 other things.
And so, you know, I was going to say something, but you hit it on the nail when you said, okay, I know for this piece, I'm going to need a weekend. I know I'm going to need a week. And so it's about, you know, saying, let me do all of my laundry for the next week. Let me meal prep so that I'm not starving while I'm painting, right? Because that's the thing, you get into your artistry and you don't even like eat. But it's like making sure all around you, you're set up for success, right? It's like, if you know you have big expectations, you're gonna sit and do this piece. Like, I need you to meal prep, do your laundry, feed the cat, take moments, set a timer to feed the cat during the week when you're stuck in the middle of the piece, you know, the things you can't do. But it's almost like making sure that you don't have super high expectations where you're not meeting them, but have just the right expectations where you feel comfortable and you feel good about setting some time apart. Does anyone else have any questions about, you know, just setting boundaries, keeping a schedule, how to start that process? And we can take questions at the end also, but just thought I would give you some time and space while we're in the here and now.
I guess I just wanted to add how I feel like having boundaries as an artist is really important, because a lot of like people in artists' lives don't really realize the work it takes to be an artist, and that it is like a career path and a job, even if you have another full-time job. And so I think, I don't know, I guess I just wanted to chime in because that's kind of where my head is at when you're talking about, you know, boundaries with being an artist.
Yeah. So I think it's all about, there's so many different kind of boundaries, and without going into each of them, like I think of physical boundaries, I think of emotional boundaries, because as an artist, we are very emotional people. We're emotional about our work specifically. Then you have the intellectual boundaries, you have time boundaries, blah, blah, blah. And so I think it's most about creating that space for your work and not feeling guilty about your work being a priority, right? And prioritizing your work, just like you do prioritizing feeding the kitty cat, because both need to be done, right? Like the cat's got to be fed, or else it's going to start scratching up a lot of things in the house, right? The painting needs to be painted, because if not, I'm pretty sure you're going to start feeling empty. So it's similar, right? And so it's about just setting boundaries and, learning how can you keep, setting these boundaries where you're learning how to do them head on without feeling guilty and understanding that this is something that you are valuing. Does that make sense? Dr. Will, you look like you want to chime in. Do you have anything to chime in about? Because I know you like the word.
Yes. I love the B word. And so for me, when I think of boundaries, it's not about what you're pushing away. It's about recognizing what you need to feel at peace, right? It's what you need to feel at peace with who you are and where you are at life. So sometimes it's not about going the extra mile. Sometimes it's about being still. Sometimes it's about actually sitting back. A lot of times in our art, we tend to think about the dream and what the dream means to us. And we get so focused on what we're trying to be that we forget that actually who we are in that actual process. And so art is a reflection of yourself. So when you have that artist block, you're not blocked because you're not creative. It's about you never took time for yourself. And that actually might be a form of burnout. So that boundary is so important to understand that you are trying to become you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also about being clear about what your needs are. Like if you were setting boundaries and this was a relationship conversation, you still have to be clear about what your needs are. But even as an artist, when you're having boundaries and trying to keep a schedule, if you're clear about, I need to focus as an artist, I need to allow time for my art, you've got to make sure you're clear about that need, whether it's with anybody. So that's really important. Moving to the next, being an artist has its challenges, right? So we talk about feelings of self-doubt. Everybody on this call have doubted themselves, and felt like we weren't good enough. We weren't kind to ourselves. And then we also thought, okay, well, if I'm not good enough, well, now we're in the age of social media where we're looking at everybody's stuff and everyone might think they're Picasso or you think someone's Picasso. Now you're looking at your painting, you're judging yourself and all these other things. And so one of the bigger things to take away from this part is not to compare yourself to others as an artist, but also not to isolate yourself as an artist. There are some times where, like someone else said, you could be stuck on a piece or trying to perfect a song or trying to do, whatever your craft is. And you kind of can isolate yourself sometimes. So realizing what is it about yourself that you are having a challenge with and figuring out how can I overcome this challenge? Because it might be isolating yourself from others because all you want to do is focus on your craft. It also could be comparing yourself to others. So let's think, is there any challenge that you guys would like to, raise a concern about?
One thing that comes up for me a lot, and I'm assuming other artists, is like kind of the inner critic and maybe like the expectations, I guess, of like the final product before you even get started on it. Is like that's almost like a big block for me sometimes.
Yeah, and you can't even get started on a project because you've already talked yourself out of it and told yourself that it's gonna fail. Yeah, right away. Go ahead, Dr. Will.
The resources for me. Sometimes I allow the resources to block me from my artistic ability and compassion for myself. When you're not getting paid in a way that doesn't reflect the amount of effort you put into it, or that like, hey, we can't support you with these supplies So you're gonna have to get these for yourself. It's like, it makes me question my worth, right? Because there are people making millions off of what I'm doing. So now I start comparing myself, like Ashley was saying. And so a lot of times resources are always a hard thing to really get over. It's like you don't need all the resources, but you need the resources that fit you, and know how to ask for that. That's very challenging, to have a language to ask for those things.
Yep. And so last but not least, the why. So when you begin to take care of yourself, you allow yourself to be vulnerable. Some people have an issue with being vulnerable. They see it as a weakness, right? But when you allow yourself to take care of yourself, you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and you can feel those vulnerabilities. And once you feel those vulnerabilities, you should embrace them and kind of turn them into strength. So, one thing that I used to be super, super vulnerable about is how, theater. I used to talk to some kids about how theater, like saved my life and those different things. And I had to turn it into a strength. Okay. And so I would tell the kids how to turn, those moments that they're by themselves into a strength. How to, they felt like they were afraid to talk in front of people. So helping them turn those things that they're so vulnerable about, and the things that, they were insecure about, into a strength. I think it's also super important for artists to learn how to be with other artists. I think it's so funny. I saw this meme, and it was a bunch of different artists in a room, and no one was talking to each other. And it's like there's so many different artists who are like socially awkward, but also they want to, do things. And so it was like, in order sometimes to be vulnerable, you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit more, and surround yourself by other people who are artists doing the same, similar things, and it makes you, feel a little better. All right, so now I'm gonna shift things over to Dr. Will. He has developed this amazing modality, which is another framework for looking at different things. And I think you'll be super empowered by this for sure. And it gives another avenue of looking through a different lens when it comes to self-care.
That was a great send off. Thank you, Ashley. And I just parked. Everything was timing. Like, yes, you are a winner. I love it. I absolutely love it. So, restorative enhancement modality. This is something that I've been creating. So for me, healing is my art. And I happen to use music and psychology, mind and music, as my way of healing. And so I've created restorative enhancement modality as a response to my artistry, my own healing that was needed. And it's my gift to other artists to help them heal. And so this is a model that's holistic, experiential, and integrative, which means that it takes the modern psychology, the modern medicine, and gives it an artistic, holistic experience. And so I want to offer this to you all as a way to do self-caring, because the truth is that it uses the same narrative therapeutic approach, where that the more you tell your story, the less you do become of it. And so I want to explore this with you. And I'm not going to get too headspace. I'm going to get right into the nitty gritty of it, so you don't have to hear all the theory behind it. I just want to get into the nuts and bolts of it, to kind of make self-care in this applicable and tangible. So I'm excited to explain this. Let's get to the next slide. So the way I look at your life and the way that you should look at your life is in 8 different ways. The way that I see you is from a physical health perspective, a financial occupational perspective, a social perspective, a mental emotional perspective, an environmental perspective, an educational perspective, a family perspective, and a spiritual perspective. That's 8 different ways that you live your life. I believe when I created this that people live their lives in these 8 different ways. And you only have 100% of yourself. So all those 100% go into this thing. So I've had clients that have when I have them do this, they're like, oh, I ended up with 120%. So you're 20% over your actual limit. We got to change your lifestyle. We have to scale some things back. Never in my own therapy, even as a client, has my therapist ever said, well, actually, maybe you need to actually do less, William. It's always, well, how can we manage it? How can we prevent it? Right? It was never about how I could actually live in self-preservation. And so the feeling of what this is understanding that you are 8 types of a person. And so I call these things health modalities. And so just a quick curiosity, when you look at this, do you see yourself in this? I'm going to explain each one of these, right? And so I'm curious, just real quick, when you look at these 2 symbols, these 2 icons, how do you look at your life just looking at it right now? Like, do you see any more pop up more than the other? What does it look like for you?
There's definite overlap for me, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
One always affects the other, always.
Yeah. Yeah. They all spill into each other somehow. So, funny enough, I have about 3 Grammy Award-winning artists as clients, right? And, you would think, like, if they hit that moment of success, you're like, oh, man, like, they must really love and live their art in all this. But when I tell you 6 of those health modalities are being greatly impacted, and they didn't even realize how their art was affecting the other spaces, it wasn't until they started managing each one did they find enough clarity to figure out what their project or what their theme or what their creativity needed to feel more centered. A lot of them were pulled in so many different ways that they couldn't get back to themselves after their success. And so it doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a company, if you're an entrepreneur, you have 8 different ways that you have to be living. And there is a balance to it, but the balance is understanding that you don't have to be perfect in it. What you do is have to experience them all. And so when it comes to physical health, right, we're also actually, can you go to the next slide? Because we'll actually get into this. So we're going to go into this. So when it comes to physical health, make sure you get your purpose pen, your purpose paper. So physical health is all about understanding the output and input of your body. How much am I working out? How much am I lifting? How much am I sleeping? How much medicine am I taking? Am I going to see the doctor? Where are my nutrients? What am I deficient in? What kind of vitamins do I need? What type of workouts am I doing? It's about how you live, how you rest, how you play. That is physical health. So in my art as a musician, I need to understand that I have to work out, or I can't blow through my trombone and my trumpet and my tuba. I can't perform at a high. I'm about to be performing in about 45 minutes at a New Orleans event, downtown Akron. Well, not downtown. And I have to be ready I have to be ready to do this. And so I need to work out every day. I need to stretch and make sure I don't pull a muscle while I'm playing my music. So that's important. 2, financial and occupational health. That's about, am I loving the work I do? What is my career? What is my job? You know, understanding, is this job a reflection of who I am? Financial health. It's about, am I making the right type of money to feel like I can be present in this right now? These are the type of questions that you should be going through to help understand what's expected of you as far as your financial strength. Like I said, the financial resources were important for me to be able to do what I do. I can't travel and tour the world and not pay for a plane ticket. So I need to learn how to ask for the things I need. So I had to make sure that my occupational financial health was established. Then you have social health. So social health is about your relationships. It's about your friendships. It's about the friends we make. Do you have good friends? Do you have a support system? Do you have a social life? Do you know where you're going to hang out? How do you hang out? What is a version of hanging out? For me, hanging out is going to the movies at 12 o'clock with, randomly and being there. That's my social life. And I make friends with whoever at the movie theater. That's my lifestyle. Or I go to Comic-Con. I make friends there. That's what I do. So it's about how I make relationships with people. And that can even be intimate partners as well. That's something to consider. Let's go on to number 4. Ooh, mental and emotional. So for me, mental and emotional health is about how well do you handle stress? How well do you carry stress? How well do you process the stress and the mental focuses that you go through? How are you emotionally? How are you feeling? And how are you going through that? Environmental health. Environmental health, this is a great one. It's not about who you are. It's about where you are, right? It's about where you are. So when I'm thinking about where I hang out at, no, I don't want to go hang out at the gym every single day. I need to go to a library sometimes. I need to go to the Akron Museum of Art sometimes, so I need to go and expand where I'm at, because the truth is that sometimes we get so stuck in where we are in life. And sometimes it just takes a next fresh breath of air. So like for me, I might rent a Airbnb somewhere downtown Cleveland, or get a hotel room, or have a staycation. Instead of traveling out, sometimes it's just about enjoying my city as a fan and not as someone living here. We don't take advantage of our own city because we have to deal with our own city. People come visit our city. People actually come to our city to hang out. That's weird. Well, they do it. So why don't I have excitement? So we got to get out. There's happening in the city. And then 6, educational health. I love educational health. This is, are you learning? Why are you learning? If you have to stop learning as an artist, that is not okay. As an artist, we continually change, developing, and creating, and brown and building up. I break down more than sometimes, so that's just what it is. I might break up more. I don't know, but the point that a lot of times I am in the process of recreating myself. Okay, to recreate yourself. And so in the educational health, you have to keep learning. You have to keep learning. Let's go on to my favorite number. So number 7, family. So this is about like who's your cousin. This isn't about that. It's also about the genetic makeup of you, right? What's the history of your family? What's the genealogy of your family? What conditions does your family have and have an impact on today?
I think he's frozen. So I'll jump in until he to figure out what he's saying is more of a game. So I'm pretty sure he can hear me. You're frozen. If you can hear me, I'll wait until you're unfrozen a whole lot. So I think what he's saying is, with family, genetics are important to consider in terms of your health. So, if you realize the part of your self-care that you shouldn't talk to someone all the time and it messes with your artistry, then don't talk to them all the time. And that's also boundaries, right? But how important, that is. What does your family say about you? What do you think about your family? Who do you consider family? And then even on to number 8, the spiritual modality goes beyond relationship or religious affiliation or relationship with the higher power, but it more highlights your ability to make meaning and purpose in your life. So that one, I think what he would say is, do you believe in something greater than yourself, and can you make meaning out of that situation and influence that into your artistry? So I'm pretty sure he's gonna pop back on here at any time. I'm curious if you all have any questions about any of those modalities, any thoughts about, some of the things he talked about and how they overlap, or how you see them as some of them as self-care. What part of those modalities do you say, I need to practice self-care in this one area, but I don't know how? If you remember back to my value, I value food. So my self-care financially would be to save money and don't spend it all on the food, even though I value it.
Girl, you ain't never lied, because that food,
Listen.
you're right. So yeah, all of them in a fashion. When he was discussing, because it is a cyclical thing, right? All these things have to serve our purpose. Obviously, if we could live with no money, we'd all be in a lot better place, especially as artists. But when it comes to the financial and then the mental and emotional, how much that affects you to the point where it can affect you socially. Like, I tried living as a poet for 2 years, and it was very difficult. Like, I'm proud of that time in my life. I'm proud that I stepped out to do that, but it was not a time where I was particularly lucrative in a fiscal sense, in Uncle Sam sense. So to reflect on those times, it's like that was a very emotionally draining time in my life where I didn't, and also it ended up affecting my work as an artist, because you're running on fumes, right? Like, literally the gas tank is running on fumes and you're just like, hey, can I get $20 or $10 or $5 just for pushing myself to be here? And not realizing how much of your emotional equity is tied into that when it comes, because our art is emotional, right? So tying into that emotional equity that essentially is in a way devaluing yourself. And I think that a part of it is that the valuation that other people give to the thing that you do, even though you might do like what Willie started off with was having the comparison, because he has people who are Grammy nominated and Grammy Award winning artists, but he also is someone who is an artist who wants to have that same level of worth and recognition, right? But having that same level of worth and recognition, you still have the same life problems, right? And it's something where and I guess for me, it's like pinpointing the where in these intersections can I get the most value for myself to make it a balance. If
Yeah.
I do that, then I can actually achieve something potentially, or I could just hire a maid when I win the lottery. So one of the two.
That's so funny. That's so funny. And it's also, if you remember back when we first started, it's also questioning and challenging your experiences, right? And your stories that you began to tell yourself in the very beginning, and the experiences you had, and the knowledge you may or may not have had, in order to help. Because a lot of people, you don't grow up learning about self-care when you're in kindergarten. You don't learn about self-care when you're in high school. Unless you're an athlete and you have to take care of your body or take care of yourself and those things. So most of us learned by something happening, and we're like, oh my God, I'm stressed. Oh, this is stress. Oh, and now I have to learn how to take care of myself. And sometimes, depending on the person, our home structure, financial, occupational, sometimes even social, some things weren't taught until we had to learn them, right? Dr. Will, are you here? Are you connected? Are you back with us? Maybe.
I am connected. Can you hear me fine?
We can hear you. Maybe not.
Okay. I happened, but I'm actually taking over.
It's okay. We jumped right into the modalities,
Keep
and
going.
how they feel about the modalities, and where there's intersection of what part can they begin at, and where they were struggling at. So that's where we are.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So I'm curious how. I mean,
I think he still might be struggling with technical issues, but so yeah, I think it also depends on, like, going back and saying, okay, where am I when it comes to this? What do I need, and how can I get to point A to point B, right? And there's so much to cover when it comes to self-care that sometimes it's hard to just pinpoint one thing. It's also like, out of all of these things, what part can we begin at? Like you said, Anita, where is the strongest, most important, what comes up? If I think of all these things, for me personally, as an artist, I would think about maybe financial, occupational. I would think about, what can I learn about, making money? And maybe while I'm making money on something super small, but it's still my art, that would probably make my mental and emotional feel better, right? Because making money always makes someone feel better. And then could I take 5% of that and add it to my education and learn more, and with my artistry, so it's all about, where are we in percentage? Dr. Will was going to take you through an exercise, and I think he might be trying to call in.
Yep, I'm calling in. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I realized that my connection is bad, so I thought calling in might make it a little easier.
Yeah, no worries. So let's jump back into if you want, I tried to wrap up the modalities. If you want, you can jump back into that, or you can go into the reset deck. It's up to you.
Yeah, we can go into the reset deck, because the biggest thing is just understanding that you can live your life in 8 different ways, and your art also lives. The lifestyle of an artist is also in 8 different ways. So it's about bringing in the actual growth and prosperity of what it means to actually integrate in each one. So that was about it. That's all I wanted to say.
Sounds good. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stop sharing, because it's a little it's not as intimate as we like. Sometimes we can't see. Stop share each other. That's better. And just say, like, do you all have any specific questions that you're like, I can't leave here without understanding how to do this, or this piqued my interest and I need some answers right now about this part of what we talked about? Or maybe you're thinking, I wish he had have gone into, or he has gone into this a little more. Maybe
I'm
you
looking for it all.
wanted me to talk about boundaries for 30 minutes.
No, not the boundaries.
Not the B word.
Can I make a suggestion and see if it resonates with? Oh, Anita, you should go ahead.
No, you can go. I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Well, I was gonna say that with some of the artists that I've worked with just through my role at Summit Art Space, it seems like managing rejection is something that, you know, a lot of artists struggle with. And I don't want them to go into it if it isn't something that doesn't resonate with you guys. But I mean, it is kind of this inherent aspect of being an artist, you know, like applying for opportunities and not getting them, and kind of like managing, I guess, like the mental emotional side of that. If it doesn't resonate with you guys, then I say skip it. But just a suggestion.
I
Yeah.
like that suggestion.
Yeah. I'll say something as an artist in theater, because that was my area. I learned to have low expectations. Not saying this is something you should do, but I learned to have honestly low expectations. And if something happened great, I was all for it. And then if it didn't happen, I would go, okay, what can I do better? So I also learned to reframe my thoughts about what rejection is and what it is not. And then I took away rejection and moved it away from my identity, right? So I was like, okay, if I'm rejected, or if someone doesn't like the way I'm auditioning for this show or this piece, or they're like, you're not good enough to be in this show, it doesn't mean that Ashley is not good enough. It means that what I was doing or portraying wasn't enough for this role, but that doesn't mean I'm a bad actor. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It may mean I need more work in this one particular area. So I learned to reframe my thoughts and change and challenge my thoughts around what it looks like.
I like that. For me, I had to accept that I am better than about 10,000 other trombone players, and there's probably 10,000 other trombone players that are better than me. And my moment is supposed to be for my moment. And a lot of the rejections are also great networking moments as well. And so when I would apply for like a studio horn position in Cali or something, you know, they'd like me, but they're looking for something more classical for their piece. A lot of times it's not even about you. It's about the fact that they're looking for something that they already made their mind up on. And you may happen to be that look, or you might change their mind because they want to try something different, or they might be inspired in another way by you. So I always say, do not change your style and your thing to fit their thing. You be your thing, do your thing, because the truth is that your thing might actually inspire them to change their art. And so if you have to adjust yourself, you know, if you have to adjust yourself so much and then you get accepted, that means you have to live like that, and you have to play like that, or you have to create like that. And that's not even really what you want to do. And so I had the beautiful opportunity to play for the Temptations, and it was great, and I loved it, you know, and it was great money and all that, but it didn't reflect who I was as a horn player. So it was a great experience, but it didn't stick in me because I knew that I had to do more. And so I think one of the biggest things about rejection is knowing that it's not about whether or not you did good or bad enough. It's about, did you really show them who you were? Right. And the thing is that sometimes those rejections lead you to somebody else. Like, hey, this isn't good for you, but I know somebody else that would really love this. You know, so be a name that they remember, not a number.
That's good. I think there's something in the chat. Feeling worthy of the space I'm in. Anita, do you have anything to add to
Environmental
that,
health.
or is that it? Just curious.
Environmental health.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so like, yeah, feeling worthy of the space I'm in, because again, I'm a poet as well. I'm an organizer too. So that's like I organize for my organization Hip Hop Congress. So like that is also a thing, like being a part of an organization full of various types of artists at varying degree levels. And it's a weird space because like I get complimented, you know, and I appreciate the compliments, and that's awesome. And I really do appreciate every single person in my organization. Um, because we all are artists, right? Like that is the dopest part about being in my org. Everybody has an art form of some sort. But there are some artists who, you know, they walk in and just like they always look like they belong there, right? And feel
Mm,
worthy for me personally, even though I'm the one like and you know, I'm high up in my organization. I'm one of the co-directors, like um even with people who look up to me, I still don't always feel worthy of the space that I'm in, worthy enough for myself to stand in my own art form with them, right? So I
mm,
always give people the microphone. I always, and again, that's also my job. Like, you know, I want them to feel welcome in the organization. But I've done it so much to the point that they forget that I'm a poet.
Mm,
mm,
So,
mm,
you know, it's one of those things like getting that the not just my self-worth, but the confidence in the room for which I know I'm worthy to be there, but feeling deserving of that space.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and
So
you definitely hit it. It's a lot about your own inner self-healing work that definitely has to be done, feeling, boosting your own confidence, but also trusting that you're in that space for a reason, trusting your own decisions, trusting your own knowingness, that you're there, you know what you should know, and so you're there for a reason also.
mm,
And self-trust, trusting yourself, trusting others, and obviously, sometimes when you're in a room full of others, even if they put you there, or you were there because you're super talented and you thought of this amazing, venture.
mm. When I hear that, thank you so much for saying that, Ashley. I think about the dynamic between position versus impact. A lot of us artists are in positions that don't make the impact, or a lot of us are making impact, but we're not in the right positions. And so it's always this dichotomy. We always have one or the other, or have one but don't have the other, and it makes us change. It's not self-esteem; it's self-concept. So like even the way you spoke about your company, is you have a very high self-esteem, but your self-concept, how you think you're being viewed, is the one that's low, right? You have a high self-esteem but a low self-concept. It's you questioning, well, how am I supposed to show up if they do all this? So what it sounds like is quality time, right? How do you spend quality time for yourself? And that's environmental health. It's not about who you are, it's about where you are. Where are you doing your art? Are you doing enough of your own art? Because once again, you're fixated on what other people are doing outside of you rather than who you are within you. And so, like that inner work that Ashley was saying, that comes from environmental health. So, my golden rule is, with self awareness comes emotional responsibility. You have such great self awareness, and now it's time to be emotionally responsible with your art, allowing that quality time to come back with your art. Because what you're doing is a lot of output and not a lot of input, which goes back to that physical health of your art.
Yep.
was a great question.
That was it. All right. Well, if those are all the questions we have, I think that we would like to just say thank you to Summit Art Space for, having us
Yes.
and allowing us another, platform just to talk about all the things we love, mental health and art. We truly, truly do like see you because we're also artists, right? And so it's not like just these people who happen to care about therapy and care about all those other things, but actually enjoy, being an artist first. I was an artist first, and I will always be an artist, and that speaks to our soul. So thank you.
And I love that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley and Will, for leading us through this really meaningful discussion tonight. So happy that Tamara and Anita, you joined us for this great conversation. I do like to recap these by just kind of going through everything that we did together, because we did go through a lot of important stuff. So tonight we explored how the stories we tell ourselves influence our well-being. We discussed the importance of setting boundaries to ensure our needs are being met and that artwork making is a priority in our lives. This ultimately leads to self-care and releases us of guilt that we have around our art making. We discussed how to embrace vulnerabilities and challenges as an artist and how pushing yourself out of your comfort zone will make you grow. We learned how connecting with other artists to know that you're not alone in your challenges is very important. We utilized Dr. Will's REM wellness model. This showed us the 8 aspects to being a person and how they can show up in our lives in different ways and how it's important for all of them to be integrated. So thanks again, everyone. Glad it was great for you guys. I did put the next professional practice link in the chat there, and I hope you all have a great night.